Chapter 8:20. Yun Shu did not expect that someone would be able to identify her so easily. She blushed and asked with widened eyes, "How did you know that I'm a tree demon?" The man smiled confidently. "Not only do I know that you're a little tree demon, I also know this." He pointed at Gu Xingyin in her arms. "This little fellow is also a little monster that hasn't transformed." Hearing him mention Gu Xingyin, Yun Shu's expression immediately became vigilant. She hugged Gu Xingyin and took a step back. Seeing her like this, the man could not help but laugh. "Why are you so nervous? I don't have any ill intentions towards the little fox." What he said was true. Gu Xingyin did not feel any ill intentions from this man. Furthermore, fighting is not allowed in Lotus City. Blood is not allowed. You should know that, right? Yun Shu finally heaved a sigh of relief. The man suddenly asked, "Why are there only the two of you here? Where are your elders?" Speaking of this, his expression became serious. Although the demon race was unrestrained by nature, they treasured their cubs the most. Every demon cub was the most precious treasure and should be guarded by an adult demon until they had the strength to protect themselves. Why did these two little fellows come to Lotus City alone? However, Yun Shu's response was a blank expression. What cub was precious? She had always grown up alone. Looking at her expression, the man immediately understood. "Don't tell me. You've always been outside by yourself?" Yun Shu remembered that Gu Xingyin had told her not to mention the peach blossom forest and nodded. The man held his forehead. He did not expect that he would ask about two wild cubs. Looking at their appearances, one of them had just transformed and was at most a little stronger than a cultivator in the qi refining stage. The other one was still in her infancy stage. "You're lucky to be able to come to Lotus City so smoothly," he said with a sigh. "Are you willing to come with me? In Lotus City, we demon cultivators have our own place," he asked. Yun Shu was still at a loss, but Gu Xingyin called out softly to express her agreement. Since Gu Xingyin was willing, Yun Shu would not object. The man looked at Gu Xingyin in amazement and praised, "It's a beautiful and clever little guy." As he walked, he said, "My name is Xian. My original form is a black panther. It's fate that we met today. Speaking of which, why are you still holding this stone?" Yun Shu smiled shyly. "Shirtu has protected us for a long time. I'm a little reluctant to part with him." Protection? Xian thought of Stone, that big guy. Perhaps he had intimidated a lot of people in the human world. He had a pure and innocent heart. Xian brought Tree and Fox to a courtyard. "Bodhi Granny, I've brought two cubs." Gu Xingyin was surprised to see Xian lowering his head with a sincere and respectful look. Along the way, she had a rough understanding of Xian's personality. He was carefree and unrestrained. What kind of person could make him so respectful? Soon she would know what kind of person he was. The courtyard door opened. Gu Xingyin was carried by Yun Shu and followed behind Xian. There was a very tall tree planted in the courtyard, and there were many beautiful flowers growing there as well. However, no one would see these at first glance when they entered, because there was another person sitting in the courtyard. Chapter 8:21. The person was a woman, but she was wearing an ordinary green monk's robe. Her hair was tied up in a bun with a wooden hairpin. Her attire, which was neither fish nor fowl, did not look out of place at all on her. She did not look old. In fact, she looked very young, probably not more than 30 years old. However, if one looked at her temperament, one would know that this was not something a 30-year-old person should have. She simply sat there, but it was as if all the troubles in the world were far away, leaving only this pure land in front of one's eyes. Yun Shu stared blankly at the woman and mumbled, "What a beautiful sister, just like what?" Her eyes suddenly lit up and she said, "Just like those female bodhisattvas in the temples." When she was still in the human city, she went to a few temple fairs. The female bodhisattvas in the temples also looked like this. Their faces were calm and compassionate, always looking at the world with kindness. Xian blinked his eyes and looked at Yun Shu with a dumbfounded expression. "Sister?" She really dared to call her that. Then he looked at the woman carefully. "Bodhi Granny, this cub doesn't know anything," the woman smiled at him. Are you afraid that I'll be angry with 2 children? Xian smiled embarrassedly. The woman waved at Yun Shu, her eyes filled with unconcealable fondness. Child, come here. Yun Shu liked this sister's aura very much, so she walked over. What's your name? Yun Shu answered obediently, Yun Shu. The woman smiled and nodded. That's a good name. She continued, you can't call me sister, you should call me Granny. My name is Bodhi, you can call me Bodhi Granny too, right? Yun Shu knew that Granny was a form of address for the elderly. This woman did not look old at all, so why was she called Granny? Yun Shu kept her doubts to the bottom of her heart and did not dare to ask too much. She obediently called out, Bodhi Granny. Gu Shengyin also called out, but her voice was only the cry of a cub. When Bodhi Granny's gaze fell on Gu Xin, she paused and said, this little one is not ordinary. What's her name? Yun Shu hurriedly replied, Bodhi Nanny. Her name is Qing Bo. Bodhi Nanny stared at Gu Shengyin's watery eyes and nodded. This name suits you. The man and the fox settled down in this small courtyard. It wasn't until a long time later that Gu Shengyin understood something. Bodhi Granny's true form was originally a Bodhi tree at the entrance of the Lotus Pedestal sect. After listening to the Buddhist teachings of the Lotus Pedestal sect every day, she actually developed a root of wisdom and cultivated a human form. Since she had cultivated a human form, she no longer stayed at the entrance of the sect. Instead, she wore a monk's robe and tied her hair into a bun, becoming a lay disciple of the Lotus Platform sect. Taking in a demonic cultivator, and a female demonic cultivator at that, as a lay disciple, one could see the tolerance of the Lotus Platform sect. In terms of Buddhist teachings, there were probably many disciples of the Lotus Platform sect who were not as proficient as Bodhi Granny. Not long after, demonic cultivators would come to this small courtyard to pay their respects to Bodhi Granny. However, only Yun Shu and Gu Shengyin remained in her courtyard to cultivate. Bodhi Granny seemed to like Yun Shu a lot because they were of the same race. Not only did she personally teach her cultivation techniques, but she also frequently tested her. As for Gu Shengyin, she let her do as she pleased. Chapter 8:22. Yun Shu was puzzled. Mammy, why are you only teaching me and not Qingbo? Bodhi Mammy smiled and patted her head. I can't teach her. Although she could not tell what kind of bloodline the little fox had, after years of studying Buddhism, she always had some vague predictions about certain things. This little fox was not simple. She was afraid that she didn't have the qualifications to teach her. Bodhi Mammy didn't care about her, so Gu Shengyin was happy to be free. After all, after she transformed, she would be able to unlock her inherited memories. There would naturally be the most suitable cultivation method for the 9-tailed Arctic fox to cultivate. Therefore, she really didn't need to be anxious. She began to walk outside. Those who could enter Lotus City were all kind-hearted people. Therefore, no one would have any bad intentions towards a little fox. At most, they would look at her and praise her as a pretty little fellow. Gu Shengyin heard 2 people talking beside her. An elder from the Lotus Pedestal sect is going to give a lecture on Buddhism. Let's quickly go and get a seat. Gu Shengyin was curious. From the looks of it, this wasn't the first time the Lotus Pedestal sect was giving a lecture on Buddhism. Moreover, it didn't seem to be taboo for outsiders to listen in. She had always been interested in the Lotus Pedestal sect, so she followed the 2 people for a while. A huge Buddhist temple appeared in front of her. On the plaque above the main door, the words, Lotus Pedestal Sect, appeared in front of her. Just by staring at these 3 words, Gu Shengyin felt her mind become clear. Some small worries and troubles seemed to disappear with it. At the same time, some problems that had been troubling her for many days were easily solved. These 3 words must have been written by an almighty Buddhist. Gu Shengyin had always respected this kind of almighty, not to mention that she had just benefited from it. Therefore, she clasped her 2 paws together and bowed to the plaque. Amitabha, this little benefactor is quite spiritual. A gentle voice spoke from beside her. Gu Shengyin turned her head and saw a kind-looking old sorcerer smiling at her. There were 2 little novice monks standing behind him, looking at him with a grin. Only then did Gu Shengyin remember what she looked like now. A fox was bowing to a plaque. No wonder the two novice monks were smiling so. She turned around and ran through the door. A novice monk couldn't help but laugh out loud. The old mage turned his head and sighed helplessly. You two are still laughing at him. Your wisdom is not even half as good as his. The young novice monk held back his laughter and said, This disciple knows. This disciple doesn't have any other meaning. I just feel that the little fox's appearance is really too cute. The old mage recalled the scene just now and couldn't help but smile. Forget it, you can leave. Gu Shengyin entered the Lotus Pedestal sect unimpeded. She didn't know how magnanimous this sect was. She was a Yao cultivator, but she had entered the sect's restricted area. So many people had turned a blind eye to her. Weren't they afraid that she would steal something? In fact, she was overthinking things. The Lotus Pedestal sect had been famous for so many years. Countless cultivators and Yao cultivators had come because of its reputation, but there had never been any bad rumors. One of the most important reasons was that the guests who came here were all kind-hearted and upright people. Another reason was the strength of the Lotus Pedestal sect itself. Their powerful strength gave them enough confidence. After making several turns, Gu Shengyin realized that she was lost. Chapter 8:23. After all the rooms in the Lotus Pedestal sect were built to look the same. After she walked around twice, she helplessly found that she couldn't tell north from south anymore. At this moment, she faintly heard the voice of a young novice monk. Martial Uncle Yuan Xiao isn't going to attend the assembly today? It said that Martial Uncle's Dharma has reached a bottleneck and he's now in seclusion, so he won't be going today. Gu Shengyin's eyes lit up, and she walked towards the place where the voice came from. However, when she walked around there, the young novice monk was nowhere to be seen. She helplessly lay on the ground, and simply enjoyed the scenery in the courtyard. Let's rest for a while. If worse comes to worst, I'll let the system take me out later if I really can't find the way. The system. Suddenly, the door where Gu Shengyin was lying on the ground opened with a creak. Gu Shengyin, who happened to be lying on the ground at the door, was caught off guard by this push, and her round and furry body directly rolled several times on the ground, all the way to the flower bed outside the corridor. Gu Shengyin, who was seeing stars. The person who pushed open the door, who never expected this to happen. A trace of surprise flashed through that person's eyes, but he quickly reacted. He hurriedly walked forward, and picked up Gu Shengyin, who was still dizzy and hadn't reacted yet. Gu Shengyin felt that she had fallen into an embrace filled with the familiar scent of Lian Xiang. This aura cleared her dizzy mind for a moment. Wait a minute. Her lover in this life was a monk? She was so shocked by this cruel fact that she didn't feel dizzy anymore. She raised her head and looked up. At this moment, that person also lowered his head and said with a smile, "Fortunately, you're not injured." Their eyes met. Gu Shengyin was stunned for a moment. This face is really good-looking. After so many worlds, Gu Shengyin felt for the first time that her lover was so suitable for Lian Xiang. His face was elegant and delicate, and there was a gentle smile on his face. His eyes were gentle and focused on Gu Shengyin. Gu Shengyin could clearly see his own reflection in those eyes. Yuan Xiao was stunned for a moment when she met that pair of beautiful green eyes, but she quickly returned to normal. He gently placed Gu Shengyin back on the ground. He put his palms together and bowed to her. "Little fox, I apologize for what happened just now. This poor monk apologizes to you." What the hell was this benefactor little fox? Did you ever think that a fox would understand you if you apologized to her in such a serious manner? Wait, the point is, you haven't even shaved. Why are you calling me this penniless monk? Yuan Xiao saw that the little fox was staring at him without blinking and thought that something was wrong. He patiently asked, "Little fox benefactor, is there something you need?" Gu Shengyin did not say anything. He smiled. If there's nothing else, this penniless monk will continue with his homework. Gu Shengyin still did not speak. Yuan Xiao then returned to his room, but he found that the little fox had followed him in. Gu Shengyin looked around the room. The furnishings inside were very simple. It was just a bed, a table by the window, and a cabinet for Li Mu's clothes. It seemed that the life in this Lotus Pedestal sect was quite poor. Yuan Xiao looked at the little fox's pair of beautiful eyes that were very human-like as it looked around the room. He couldn't help but smile. He no longer cared about her and just read Buddhist scriptures by the window. After finishing a round of homework, he found that there was a little thing lying at his feet. Chapter 8:24. Yuan Xiao didn't know when the white, fluffy little fox had fallen asleep. She lay softly by his feet, and Yuan Xiao even saw her smacking her lips in satisfaction. He couldn't help but smile. He didn't know why, but when he saw this little fox, he felt a sense of closeness. Buddhism was about fate, and he didn't reject this feeling. On the contrary, he was willing to accept his instincts and get close to this little fellow. He gently picked her up from the ground and placed her in his arms. Gu Shengyin vaguely felt that his body had been moved. He opened his eyes in a daze, and when he saw that it was him, he felt that the embrace was so comfortable that he fell asleep again. Yuan Xiao felt that she was both pitiful and adorable, but he couldn't help but worry. What if she met a bad person in the future? She trusted others so easily. After thinking about it, he felt that he could only put in more effort to watch over her in the future. What a silly little fellow. He couldn't help but lightly flick her head. Gu Xin unhappily reached out her paw and slapped his mischievous hand on her head before falling asleep again. She slept soundly all the way until dusk. When she opened her eyes, she saw Yuan Xiao's flawless, handsome face. The sun had not set yet, but the light had turned into a soft orange color of Yuan Xiao. The light scattered on Yuan Xiao's face, making him look peerless. As a fox, how could he endure such a beauty? Gu Shengyin straightened his back and planted a kiss on Yuan Xiao's cheek without hesitation. Yuan Xiao was stunned for a moment. She touched her cheek that had been kissed and lowered her head to look at the little fox. Seeing the little fellow's undisguised pride, his surprise disappeared without a trace. She was still a little benefactor. When she saw something she liked, she had to show her sovereignty. Then, was he the one she liked? Thinking of this possibility, a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. Looking at the sky, he said to Guxin, "Benefactor little fox, it's getting late. If you don't go back, your family will be worried." Gu Shengyin thought for a moment. Indeed, if Yun Shu did not see her, she would probably cry. She gently bit Yuan Xiao's sleeve. Yuan Xiao looked at her in confusion. Gu Shengyin was anxious. When she saw the pen and paper on the table, her eyes suddenly lit up. She bit the end of the brush and finally wrote a word on the paper in a crooked manner. Yuan Xiao looked at it for a long time and finally recognized that it was the word Lu. "You mean you're lost?" he asked. Gu Shengyi nodded. Yuan Xiao thought for a moment. "If you're lost in the temple, just nod your head and I'll bring you out. If you don't remember the way home, just nod your head." Gu Shengyi nodded her head. She just couldn't tell the path inside the Lotus Pedestal sect. Hearing the little fox say that she could find her own way home, for some reason, Yuan Xiao felt a sense of loss. He even thought that if this little fellow did not have a home, it would be great if she could always stay by his side. In the next moment, he was frightened by his own selfish thoughts. How could he have such thoughts? Amitabha. He hurriedly put his hands together and chanted the name of Buddha, hoping that Buddha would not blame him. Chapter 8:25. Yuan Xiao carried Gu Shengyin out of the courtyard. Along the way, the disciples of the Lotus Pedestal sect were very surprised to see him carrying a little fox in his arms. Gu Shengyin heard these people address Yuan Xiao as martial uncle, and some even addressed him as Grandmaster Xiao. She could not help but feel a little surprised about his identity. It seemed that this little monk who had not even finished shaving his head was not an ordinary person. Yuan Xiao did not seem to be walking very fast, but in fact he arrived at the entrance of the Lotus Pedestal sect very quickly. He gently squatted down and placed Gu Shengyin on the ground. He said softly, "Little fox benefactor, can you walk back on your own?" Gu Shengyin nodded. Yuan Xiao looked at her and suddenly felt a little reluctant. "After parting today, it would be very difficult for us to meet again, right?" He sighed and silently chanted a few words of Buddhism. He put away the melancholy in his heart and told himself that everything was fate. Suddenly his robe was tugged at. He lowered his head and saw that the little white fox was using her claws to tug at his robe. When she saw that he was finally looking at her, she let go of his robe and stretched out a paw to shake it at him. He could not help but smile. The melancholy he felt just now disappeared without a trace. "Little fox benefactor, goodbye." He said goodbye to her in a serious tone. The passers-by did not find it strange when they saw the people of the Lotus Pedestal sect talking to a fox. There were many strange people in the Lotus Pedestal sect. After Gu Shengyin said goodbye to her lover, she ran back. It was almost dark. She had never been back so late. Yun Shu was probably worried. Sure enough, halfway through, Gu Shengyin saw a familiar figure. Qing Bo Yun Shu, who was anxiously walking on the street, saw Gu Shengyin running on the road. She called out to her in surprise and squatted down to pick her up. "Qing Bo, where did you go? I was so worried." Yun Shu could not help but complain. She was really anxious. Ever since she was conscious, she had always lived in that peach blossom forest. The only person who could communicate with her and grow up with her was Qing Bo. Although Bodhi Granny was a good person now, Qing Bo was the most important person in Yun Shu's heart. Gu Shengyin also knew that she had made her worried today, so she very consciously called out to her. "I'm sorry, Yun Shu. I went to the Lotus Platform sect and forgot to tell you." How could Yun Shu really be angry with her? It was just that he spoke a little too harshly in a moment of desperation. Soon, Gu Shengyin's coaxing made her laugh, and he carried her back. "You're back." Bodhi Nanny smiled as she watched the two of them walk back. "I told you that nothing would happen to you in Lotus City, but Yun Shu was so worried that she insisted on going out to look for you. I couldn't persuade her otherwise." Gu Shengyin's heart warmed slightly. She called out to Yun Shu softly and only snuggled in her arms without saying a word. Bodhi Nanny looked at the two of them and wanted to laugh. She waved her hand and dismissed them. "All right, you two must be tired. There is food in the room. Rest early after eating." The next day, Gu Shengyin went to the Lotus Platform sect again. This time, she told Yun Shu and Bodhi Nanny in advance that she would be back at night and that they did not need to worry. Yuan Xiao, Gu Shengyin did not know that after she went out, Bodhi Nanny was sitting alone in the courtyard, muttering that name in a slight daze. Chapter 8:26. This time, Gu Shengyin knew the way and accurately found Yuan Xiao's house. Yuan Xiao was chanting Buddhist scriptures as usual when someone knocked lightly on the door. At first, he thought it was a disciple from the sect looking for him and was wondering why the other party didn't say anything. Then, he saw the door open a crack and a small white figure squeezed in. He was surprised and delighted. "Benefactor Little Fox?" Gu Shengyin paused when she heard this name. Being called Benefactor Little Fox was really not nice. She huffed and puffed as she ran to Yuan Xiao's side. Then, she climbed up his thighs with familiarity. Yuan Xiao smiled as he watched her act of not being shy with strangers. Then, Gu Shengyin once again struggled to bite the pen. With the movement of the pen tip, the two crooked words, "Qing Bo," finally took shape. "Qing Bo." Yuan Xiao softly read it twice and looked at Gu Shengyin. "Is this your name?" Gu Shengyin nodded her head vigorously. Yuan Xiao looked at her pair of watery eyes and couldn't help but reach out his hand to touch them. "I wonder who gave you such a name," he muttered in a low voice. Gu Shengyin blinked her eyes. No one gave her a name. From the moment she could remember, she knew that she was called Qing Bo. Yuan Xiao looked at Gu Shengyin with a complicated expression. Of course, he knew that it was impossible for ordinary beasts to enter Lotus City. Even if there was, it couldn't be this little fox. With just one look, Yuan Xiao knew that this was a demonic beast that hadn't grown up yet. To be able to enter Lotus City, one must have been recognized by the Lotus Platform sect. But logically speaking, it was not good for him to get close to this little fellow. After all, although the little fox had not transformed, her intelligence was no different from that of an ordinary child. Benefactor Little Fox was just like a little girl. How could he, a monk, have the nerve to get close to her? But looking at Gu Shengyin lying softly on her body with a look of dependence, Yuan Xiao felt that she was thinking too much. Qing Bo was just a human child. What could she know? As long as his mind was calm, why would he bother to be disturbed by these factors? Therefore, he convinced himself to keep Gu Shengyin by his side. Gu Shengyin liked the feeling of watching him quietly as his lover. Not long after, all the disciples of the Lotus Platform sect knew that there was an extremely beautiful and intelligent little fox by martial Uncle Yuan Xiu's side. That little fox was not raised by martial Uncle Yuan Xiu. Instead, it ran over from the outside. Every time martial Uncle Yuan Xiu meditated and chanted, she would lie there to accompany him. Occasionally, she would shake her head along with the sound of the wooden fish, as if she could understand it. Gu Shengyin quickly won the hearts of all the disciples of the Lotus Platform sect. The world was more tolerant of beautiful things. Not to mention, Gu Shengyin's current appearance was not only beautiful, but also very innocent and harmless. Gu Shengyin also learned a lot about her lover during this period of time. For example, although Yuan Xiu was young, he was the disciple of the Lotus Platform sect's guardian elder, Venerable Jing Ming. Venerable Jing Ming's seniority was one generation higher than the sect master, Venerable Yuanda. Therefore, Yuan Xiu's status in the Lotus Platform sect was considered to be extraordinary. Yuan Xiu's comprehension of Buddhism was also extremely high. Even the sect master, Venerable Yuanda, personally admitted that in terms of comprehension, he could not compare to this little junior brother. However, no one knew why martial Uncle Yuan Xiu had not shaved his head for so many years even though he lived in the Lotus Platform sect. Therefore, strictly speaking, Yuan Xiu was not a true monk. He could only be considered a lay disciple of Buddhism. Chapter 8:27. After Yuan Xiu finished his evening lesson, he packed up and walked out of the door. The Lotus Pedestal sect was very quiet at night. The Buddhist disciples usually had a good schedule and most of them were ready to sleep at this time. Yuan Xiu came to the door of his master, Venerable Jing Ming's room. "Master!" The door was opened and Yuan Xiu walked in. Venerable Jing Ming sat on a praying mat. There was another praying mat in front of him. Yuan Xiu went forward and sat down. "Master, can I shave my head?" Yuan Xiu did not know how many times he had asked this question. Venerable Jing Ming was thin and his face was very peaceful. He looked at his little disciple lovingly. He was also the disciple that he was most satisfied with and worried about. "Yuan Xiu, I've told you before that you're not suitable to cultivate Buddhism. You have the roots of love that have lasted for many generations. In every lifetime, there must be someone who loves you wholeheartedly waiting for you. It's not necessarily a good thing to enter Buddhism." Yuan Xiu's expression did not change. "But Master, after so many years, I've never met anyone who's moved my heart." Venerable Jing Ming said, "You have the roots of wisdom and amazing talent. That's why I couldn't bear to see your talent buried, so I brought you to the Lotus Pedestal sect. However, I can't let you shave your head." Yuan Xiu looked at him with his eyes wide open. Venerable Jing Ming sighed. "If you shave your head, your six senses will really be pure in the future and you'll be cut off from the mortal world. We Buddhists pay attention to fate. We can't be evil people who ruin marriage." Yuan Xiu laughed softly. "Only Master, and only the Lotus Pedestal sect, would say something like that to me. If it were any other Buddhist sect, they would have brought such a talented bodhisattva back to the sect immediately to shave his head and make him a monk who serves Buddha wholeheartedly." Venerable Jing Ming put his palms together and chanted Amitabha. "Those who walk different paths cannot work together. The Lotus Pedestal sect has its own principles of doing things." Yuan Xiu also chanted Buddha's name in a low voice. He saw that his master had already closed his eyes and left with his head lowered. After Yuan Xiu left, Venerable Jing Ming's tightly shut eyes opened. He looked worriedly in the direction of his disciple's departure and muttered, "You don't just have the roots of love. In this life, I'm afraid there will be a love tribulation." The next day, when Gu Shengyin arrived at the Lotus Pedestal sect, she did not discover that Yuan Xiu was different from usual. She continued to lie beside him, watching him meditate, recite sutras, and recite the Dharma. To Gu Shengyin, these things were really boring. She didn't know how he was able to recite them day after day. However, Gu Shengyin tilted his head and looked at Yuan Xiu's delicate and soft side profile. His little monk was so good-looking. Sure enough, he looked better with his hair. Although she did not know why Yuan Xiao had not shaved her head, Gu Xingyin was happy about it. It was good that she did not shave her head. If she did not shave her head, she would not be a real Buddhist disciple. When the time came, it would not be considered a violation of the precepts. Yuan Xiao tilted her head and saw the little fox staring at her without blinking. He wondered what he would be like in a fox's world. He laughed at his strange thought. However, his mind was attracted by that pair of green eyes. What a beautiful pair of eyes. He wondered what Qingba would look like after she took human form. A woman with such a pair of beautiful eyes must be a beautiful woman, right? Chapter 828. His heart was suddenly in a mess. He recalled what his master, Venerable Jing Ming, had said to him last night. In your body, there are roots of love that have been planted for many generations. In this lifetime, there will definitely be someone who loves you wholeheartedly waiting for you. What would she look like if there was someone who loves her wholeheartedly? His heart, which had always been calm like an ancient well, was thrown into chaos just like that. When Yuan Xiao realized what he was thinking, he hurriedly lowered his head and chanted the name of Buddha several times. It seemed that his state of mind was still not calm enough. He had actually been provoked by this kind of thing. He suddenly didn't dare to look into Gu Xingyin's eyes. Right now, Qingbo was just like a child. How could he associate her with that kind of thing? He forced himself to remain calm and turned to speak to Gu Xingyin. Qingba, I have something to do. Can you go back first today? Gu Xingyin was somewhat puzzled. She called out to Yuan Xiao in confusion. After so many days of interaction, Yuan Xiao could basically understand the meaning behind her call. Only this time, Yuan Xiao didn't know how to explain it to her. Seeing the little white fox standing there with a puzzled expression and unwilling to leave, he stretched out his sleeve. Gu Xingyin only felt a gentle breeze blowing over her body. Then, in the next second, she was standing outside the door. Yuan Xiao's door was already tightly shut. Gu Xingyin was dumbfounded. All right, could something really have happened to him? Gu Xingyin wasn't really a child. She wouldn't get angry because of this and obediently ran back. She would go see what was wrong with him tomorrow. Gu Xingyin thought so. However, she didn't go to the Lotus Pedestal sect the next day. The reason was that this body seemed to be about to awaken. She slept in a daze at night. Suddenly, her body began to heat up. Was this about the time of the 100-year awakening? Gu Xingyin immediately woke up. Chaotic spiritual energy was scattered in the room. Yun Shu and Bodhi Nanny were also startled awake. Yun Shu looked worriedly at the situation in front of him. Qingba, what's going on? Bodhi Nanny was, after all, experienced and knowledgeable. She roughly understood what was going on. She pulled back Yun Shu, who was about to rush forward in a panic. She's about to transform. Don't rush forward. Transformation. Yun Shu's eyes lit up. However, Bodhi Granny frowned. The commotion in front of her seemed a little too big. Was such a violent spiritual energy really something that a little demon who had just transformed could possess? She had never been able to tell what Qingbo's bloodline was. She had even guessed that it was the powerful six-tailed fox bloodline of the fox race, but at this moment, she was unsure. At the next moment, a stream of white light flew out from Gu Xingyin's body, forming a phantom image in midair. Bodhi Granny's eyes suddenly widened. At the same time, the sound of rolling thunder came from the sky. Bodhi Granny made a prompt decision. Her figure flashed, and in this small courtyard, a huge Bodhi tree that was more than 100 feet tall broke out of the ground. At the same time, a misty green halo scattered from the Bodhi tree, forming a translucent light shield that protected the entire courtyard. Boom! The huge thunderbolt landed on the light shield. There seemed to be ripples on the light shield, but it remained majestic and unmoving. Bodhi Granny, who had reverted to her original form, was still holding Yun Shu's hand. She looked at the phantom image that emerged from Gu Xingyin's body in shock. She didn't expect that Qingbo's bloodline was not the six-tailed fox she had imagined. Instead, it was one of the most noble bloodlines of the demon race, the nine-tailed celestial fox bloodline that only existed in legends. Chapter 829. The nine-tailed celestial fox was another name for the nine-tailed Arctic fox. It was also the demon clan's honorific for the nine-tailed Arctic fox. The figure in the air was the nine-tailed Arctic fox's Dharma form. Her body quietly stopped in midair, and the 9 huge fluffy tails behind her slowly danced. The little white fox on the bed suddenly let out a pained cry. At the same time, the figure trembled slightly, and the eyes that had been tightly shut suddenly opened. When Bodhi Granny met those eyes, her body couldn't help but tremble. She forcibly suppressed the urge to kneel and lowered her head to look at Yun Shu, whose face had already turned pale. A wave of vital essence was transmitted through their clasped hands, and Yun Shu's complexion finally looked better. The nine-tailed Arctic fox had the same jade eyes as the little white fox on the bed. However, Qingbo's eyes were incomparably beautiful. However, this pair of jade eyes was extremely beautiful and contained endless loftiness and allure. One look was enough to make people sink. Bodhi Granny felt that if she hadn't been immersed in the Dharma all year round, she was afraid that she would have fallen for such a pair of eyes. Her hands that were hidden in her sleeves had already secretly formed a seal. This was her body's automatic reaction when facing a powerful opponent. At the same time, many people in Lotus City were attracted by the abnormal astronomical phenomenon. When they saw where the phenomenon came from and saw Bodhi Granny's true body revealed, they all expressed their understanding. Bodhi Granny's cultivation has improved again, right? I see that the thunderbolt is very powerful. Bodhi Granny must have a great breakthrough. Many people had envious looks on their faces as they sighed. This was also the reason why Bodhi Granny had released her true body at the first moment. She had many ways to resist the power of the thunderbolt, but she had chosen the method that consumed the most vital essence. Although the nine-tailed Arctic fox was the demon clan's supreme bloodline, not all demon clans were willing to have such a king appear out of nowhere. Before Qingbo had enough power to protect herself, it was best not to expose her identity in front of others. The pressure in the room grew stronger and stronger. Even with Bodhi Granny's protection, Yun Shu's face was already abnormally red. After all, she was too young and her cultivation was too weak. The pressure of the nine-tailed Arctic fox's bloodline, even if it was just an illusory image, was not something she could withstand. At this moment, the white fox's 9 huge tails, and the leftmost tail slowly solidified. Bodhi Granny moved her hand, and Yun Shu's figure disappeared from the room. In the next moment, she appeared under the tall Bodhi tree in the courtyard. A Bodhi tree emitted a green halo, silently protecting her. In the room, Bodhi Granny quietly watched the white fox condense the first of its 9 tails. The nine-tailed Arctic fox's Arctic fox Dharma was, and the nine-tailed white Arctic fox's Arctic fox's Arctic fox's Dharma, and Arctic fox white Arctic fox's white Arctic white Arctic fox white. At the same time, the little white fox's body gradually changed. Its small body gradually elongated, and the figure of an adult woman appeared in front of Bodhi Granny's eyes. Looking at that face and those eyes, even Bodhi Granny couldn't help but gasp. Looking back with a smile, she was a beauty that could cause the fall of a city. No wonder, no matter what kind of rumors, the nine-tailed Arctic fox was a femme fatale who could bring disaster to the world. Chapter 830. Gu Shengyin opened her eyes and suddenly realized that her body had changed. She raised her left hand and saw a flawless human palm that was as white as jade. Did she transform? Gu Shengyin looked at Bodhi Granny, who was standing at the side and looking at her with a complicated expression. She stood up and bowed to her. "Thank you, Granny, for covering Qingbo up." Although she had been lying on the bed, a trace of her consciousness had been attached to her Dharma form. Naturally, she had seen Bodhi Granny release her true form to conceal her from the heavens. However, Bodhi Granny had turned sideways to avoid this bow. "Miss Qingbo, no one in the demon clan can accept this bow of yours." Bodhi Granny's words were sincere. The demon clan valued their bloodline. As a nine-tailed Arctic fox, Qingbo was fully deserving of the title of Highness in the demon clan. After saying that, she paused for a moment and looked at Gu Shengyin seriously. "But Miss Qingbo, it's best that you don't reveal your identity now." Gu Shengyi knew that Bodhi Granny was sincerely thinking for her sake. She nodded and thanked her again. Bodhi Granny saw that she was fine and said, "My true form has attracted a lot of attention. Since you're fine, I'll take it back." Yun Shu only ran in after the huge Bodhi tree disappeared from the courtyard. She was stunned when she saw Gu Shengyin. "Qingbo, you're so beautiful." She was prettier than all the demons and humans she had ever seen combined. Gu Shengyin couldn't help but smile when she heard this simple and straightforward praise. Her face could be said to be extremely beautiful. When she smiled, it was as if 100 flowers had bloomed. Yun Shu's attention, which had just been pulled back with great difficulty, was once again attracted by her. Yun Shu only felt that Qingbo's melting technique seemed to have a strange charm. She couldn't help what? She only stared blankly at Gu Shengyin without saying a word. Bodhi Granny sighed helplessly and raised her hand to gently pat Yun Shu's head. Then he turned to Gu Shengyin and said, "Miss, you've just transformed, so I'm afraid you won't be able to control the natural charm of the nine-tailed Arctic fox. It's best that you don't go out for the next few days. Wait until you've familiarized yourself with the changes in your body and can control yourself before going out. Otherwise, it would cause a lot of trouble." Gu Shengyin also noticed that something was wrong with her. She nodded and said, "Don't worry, Nanny. I know what to do." Yun Shu was still staring blankly at Gu Shengyin as she stood up and walked towards the door. Her white dress was automatically transformed when she transformed. It was hard to tell what style it was, but Yun Shu felt that it was very elegant and beautiful. But this was nothing compared to the way she walked. The wind blew the willows, and the willows swayed in the wind. For some reason, Yun Shu recalled a few scripts she had read when she was in that small human town. Her delicate steps were incomparably exquisite. In the past, she couldn't imagine what it would be like until she saw Qingbo today. Gu Shengyin had been staying in the courtyard for the past few days. Bodhi Granny was right. She had just transformed, so she couldn't control the natural charm of the nine-tailed Arctic fox. When she saw Yun Shu unconsciously being affected by her own aura, she knew. At the very least, she had to be able to control it freely before she could go out. Otherwise, as Bodhi Granny said, it would cause bad consequences. In addition, after her awakening, the unique cultivation method of the nine-tailed Arctic fox clan appeared in her mind. She had to organize it properly. Chapter 8:31. By the time Gu Shengyin came out of her little seclusion, 10 days had already passed. She pushed open the door to the courtyard and Yun Shu ran over immediately. She looked at Qingbo. Qingbo was still so good-looking. However, the feeling that made people unable to control themselves when they saw him was gone. Bodhi Nanny did not expect Gu Shengyin to come out so quickly. She thought that Gu Shengyin would take at least a month. Was she really a nine-tailed Arctic fox? How could his talent be so shocking? Gu Shengyin felt that she had only sat for a while and 10 days had passed. Time passed so quickly that it was frightening. She really wanted to see Yuan Xiu now. She had not gone to look for him for 10 days. Would he be worried? No, Buddhist cultivators had always been indifferent. She did not know if he still remembered her. Gu Shengyin thought for a while. After saying a few words to Yun Shu and Bodhi Granny, she turned back into a little white fox and walked on the familiar path. Yun Shu did not feel that anything was wrong, but Bodhi Granny was stunned when she heard that Gu Shengyin was going to the Lotus Pedestal sect to look for a little monk. She had a deep relationship with the Lotus Pedestal sect and could be considered half a guardian. Naturally, she knew some things very well. For example, Venerable Jing Ming's disciple, Yuan Xiu, had not shaved his head because he was not pure of love. Now that a nine-tailed Arctic fox had turned into Qingbo and ran into the Lotus Pedestal sect, she could not help but think. With Qingbo's appearance, even a naturally emotionless Buddha would not be able to remain unmoved, right? She was in a daze for a long time before she finally sighed. It was all fate. What was the use of thinking so much? Lotus Pedestal sect. Yuan Xiu was meditating in his room. The wooden fish was knocked again and again, but his heart was not as calm as usual. 10 days. Today was the 11th day. Benefactor Little Fox had not appeared outside his room for 10 whole days. That day, he sent benefactor Little Fox away because his heart was in a mess. Demons were all sentient, so was the little fox benefactor angry? She was angry, so she didn't want to talk to him anymore? Did that mean that she would never come back again? The sound of the wooden fish, which had been steadily striking in the room, suddenly became disordered, just like Yuan Xiu's flawless state of mind. The door was suddenly knocked a few times. The sound of the wooden fish stopped. Yuan Xiu could recognize this voice. The disciples of the sect would not knock on the door like this. He slowly turned his head, and the door just happened to open a crack. A familiar white ball squeezed in. Gu Shengyin looked up and saw the smile on Yuan Xiu's face. It was like a gentle breeze blowing through the clear water, creating a circle of gentle ripples. Benefactor Little Fox, you're here. It was as if those 10 days had never appeared. Every time Gu Shengyin appeared, she would appear. Yuan Xiu greeted her with a smile. He knew that her name was Qing Bo, but he always liked to call her Little Fox Benefactor. Little monk, I'm much older than you. You have no respect for your elders. Gu Shengyin snorted softly. Yuan Xiu was stunned by the sweet and crisp voice. He looked at Gu Shengyin carefully and said, Congratulations, Benefactor Little Fox. Gu Shengyin snorted. I told you that my name is Qing Bo, don't call me Little Fox. Yuan Xiu readily followed her advice. Benefactor Qing Bo, this little monk's Buddhist name is Yuan Xiu. So, don't call him little monk. Gu Shengyin understood what he meant. Seeing that he was still studying the Buddhist Dharma, he walked to his side, leaped lightly and lay on top of him. This time, Yuan Xiu's body froze for a moment. Chapter 8:32. He knew that something was different. In the past, the little fox, Benefactor Qing Bo, had gained intelligence but could not speak. He could still tell himself to treat her purely as a sentient animal. But now, Benefactor Qing Bo had obviously made a great breakthrough and could speak. She should be able to successfully transform in the future. Listening to her soft and sweet voice, she was obviously a girl. But now, she was still lying on top of him as usual. Wasn't that a little wrong? Yuan Xiu was a little distressed. It seemed that he should avoid it. Gu Shengyin certainly sensed the change in him and could roughly guess what he was thinking. This was also the reason why she did not tell him that she could transform into a human. Although she did not shave, Yuan Xiu had cultivated the habits of a Buddhist disciple in the Lotus Platform sect. If he knew that she could transform into a girl, he would definitely not dare to let her get close to him. How could Gu Shengyin allow this to happen? She said lazily, Yuan Xiu, are you feeling very uncomfortable right now? Yuan Xiu didn't expect Gu Shengyin to be so direct. He put his palms together and chanted a Buddhist mantra in a low voice. Benefactor Qingba, there are clear rules in Buddhism. Our disciples are not allowed to get close to women. Gu Shengyin interrupted him. Can I be considered a woman in my current form? Yuan Xiu answered instinctively, Benefactor Qingbo, you should be able to transform in no time. Gu Shengyin yawned lazily and said, I'm just a straight white fox. You can just treat me as a fox too. Buddhist disciple, you are so pretentious. Was this how pretentious was used? Yuan Xiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. But after thinking for a while, he lowered his head and said, Amitabha, Benefactor Qingbo is very right. I have learned from you. He would just treat Benefactor Qingbo as a little fox. On this day, with Gu Shengyin's company, Yuan Xiu practiced Buddhism for a whole day without any distracting thoughts. Before Gu Shengyin left at night, she hesitated for a moment and said to Yuan Xiu, I might not be able to come every day in the future. Don't be surprised if you don't see me. She was about to officially start cultivating and couldn't be as idle as before. The smile on Yuan Xiu's lips froze for a moment before she revealed an even gentler smile. I understand, Benefactor Qingba. Gu Shengyin glanced at him again. She seemed to be afraid that he would think too much and said, But don't worry, Yuan Xiu. Even if I can't come every day, I will still think of you. You're so pretty. You're my favorite. Yuan Xiu couldn't help but laugh out loud. She nodded again. I understand, Benefactor Qingba. He watched as the white ball walked further and further away until it disappeared from his sight. He closed the door and sat down again. In front of him was a line of words on the Buddhist scripture. Saraira, form is not different from emptiness, emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. He gently closed his eyes and recited the words silently. He ignored the trace of delusion in his heart. Gu Shengyin walked out of the lotus pedestal sect in a good mood. The words she said before she left were no doubt said deliberately for Yuan Xiao to hear. As an active and passionate demon, how could she be reserved in front of the person she liked? If it wasn't for the fact that she was afraid of scaring the pure and simple little monk, she would have said something even more explicit. Forget it, let's take it slow. After all, the little monk couldn't run away. Chapter 8:33. Gu Shengyin was right. She began to run out of time. She had to work hard to cultivate and improve her strength as soon as possible. Although it was very safe in Lotus City, she couldn't stay here for the rest of her life and wait for death, could she? She was a nine-tailed Arctic fox, born with a noble bloodline. It didn't allow her to be a cowardly demon. In the demon clan, one's bloodline determined one's strength. After her awakening, there was the most suitable cultivation method for the nine-tailed Arctic fox clan in her inherited memory. Unlike the human clan, who had barriers in every small realm, she could reach the highest realm without any bottlenecks and ascend to become an immortal as long as she continued to cultivate. Although Gu Shengyin missed her lover, she had never forgotten the big threat of the heartless nun. As long as she was around, the demon clan, especially those ordinary demons with average strength, had to live in fear all day long. Gu Shengyin once asked the system why the demon clan's powerful figures didn't kill the heartless nun. The system's answer made him sigh. The demon clan was not united. There were powerful demons, but they each occupied one side and were wary of each other. The heartless nun was powerful and had many treasures on her. It would take a lot of effort to kill her, and it was likely that they would face the crazy revenge of the Watermoon sect. Moreover, the demon clan was cold-blooded. Those demons with noble bloodlines didn't have any feelings for their fellow demons who died at the hands of the heartless nun. No one was willing to take a big risk to kill her as long as it didn't infringe on their interests. Gu Shengyin sneered. They were overcautious, selfish, without courage, and in a state of disunity. This was the reason why there hadn't been a unified demon king in the demon clan for so many years. This was also the reason why the demon clan had been suppressed by the human clan even though they had a natural talent, bloodline, and lifespan advantage over the human clan. She retracted her thoughts. These were still too far away from her current self. The more time she spent on cultivation, the less time she had to find Yuan Xiao. Yuan Xiao found that his heart couldn't calm down. Every morning after his morning class, he would prick up his ears and listen to the door to see if there was that familiar knocking sound. If not, he would sit quietly on the futon for a while, and then silently begin to cultivate. His dharma did not fall, but his state of mind was no longer as pure as before. Yuan Xiao knew that a little fox had quietly crawled onto her originally clear and empty spiritual altar. After the morning class, the little white ball came to his room as promised. He would smile and greet her. Then, the two of them would have a tacit understanding. One of them would silently cultivate dharma, while the other would lie on top of him and sleep. Or, she would look at him with her mysterious and beautiful eyes. The emotions of the demon race were usually passionate and straightforward. From time to time, Benefactor Qingbo would say things like, "Yuan Xiao, you're so pretty, I like you the most," and so on. At first, Yuan Xiao would feel a little uncomfortable or embarrassed from being teased. But now, he could easily reply, "Yuan Xiao's whole body can't compare to Benefactor Qingbo's pair of eyes." His words were meant to refute, but they were also sincere. Benefactor Qingbo's pair of eyes was indeed the most beautiful pair of eyes he had ever seen in his life. Chapter 8:34. Benefactor Qingbo had not been here for half a month. Yuan Xiao looked at the scriptures in front of him and sighed inwardly. Even though he had mentioned it before, benefactor Qingbo had only been away for 5 days at most. He did not know what had happened to her. Venerable Jing Ming had looked for Yuan Xiu once. Your heart is in a mess. Venerable Jing Ming said to him. Yuan Xiu admitted without hesitation, this disciple's heart is not calm. Venerable Jing Ming did not ask for the reason. He had always allowed this disciple of his to decide the path he wanted to take in the future. He could resolve his doubts countless times, but he could not decide the path he wanted to take in the future. Moreover, this disciple was not supposed to be a Buddhist in the first place. Yuan Xiu walked out of his room and looked up at the moon in the sky. It was close to the middle of the moon. The moon was very far away, and a hazy layer of clear moonlight spilled over the courtyard. He could not help but think that if this gentle moonlight shone on Qingbo's body, it would definitely look very beautiful with her snow-white and flawless fur. In Bodhi Nanny's small courtyard, Gu Shengyin finally opened her eyes. After her pair of dark green eyes opened, they slowly turned into the black of an ordinary person's eyes. She pushed open the window and saw the big round moon outside at a glance. Before she went into seclusion, it was still a crescent moon. She finally understood the saying that cultivation had no concept of time. Bang! Yun Shu excitedly pushed open the door to her room. Gu Shengyin looked at her in surprise. Yun Shu was usually gentle and quiet. Why was she so happy today? Yun Shu looked at Gu Shengyin and said, Qingbo, tomorrow is the day of the Moon Lantern Festival. Bodhi Nanny said that she allowed me to go out and play. Looking at Yun Shu's sparkling eyes, Gu Shengyin could not help but laugh. Unlike her, Bodhi Nanny looked gentle, but she was very strict with Yun Shu. She usually restrained her to cultivate properly and did not let her take a single step outside. Every time this little girl saw her return from outside, her face would be filled with envy. Moon Lantern Festival? Gu Shengyin's heart skipped a beat. The next day, Gu Shengyin accompanied Yun Shu to play outside during the day. However, the most fun part of the Lantern Festival was at night. Unfortunately, Gu Shengyin could not accompany Yun Shu. Have fun by yourself. I have something to do. To avoid attracting attention, Gu Shengyin did not even transform into her human form. Instead, she remained in her fox form and allowed Yun Shu to carry her. Yun Shu expressed her understanding. If Qingbo were to transform into a human, the people on the street would probably not look at the lanterns anymore. Hearing Gu Shengyin say that she was leaving, Yun Shu was obviously a little disappointed. However, she had always been considerate and didn't say much. Her little appearance made Gu Shengyin feel pity for her. She reached out to rub Yun Shu's head and said, I'll personally talk to Bodhi Nanny another day and bring you out to play for a day. How about that? Yun Shu's eyes lit up when she heard this, but she still shook her head. I think it's better. Nanny said that I have to cultivate properly so that I won't be a burden to you in the future. How could she be so obedient and cute? Gu Shengyin had no resistance to this kind of little girl. She said to Yun Shu, cultivation can't be rushed. It's settled then. I'll talk to Bodhi Nanny. She looked at the sky and knew that it was time for her to leave. Otherwise, Yuan Xiu would be having dinner and preparing for her evening class. Gu Shengyin said goodbye to Yun Shu and ran towards the Lotus Pedestal sect. She arrived just in time. Yuan Xiu had just finished dinner and was preparing for her evening class. Yuan Xiu. A clear and pleasant voice came from outside the door. Gu Shengyin did not knock this time. Yuan Xiu paused. Was she hallucinating? Why did she hear Benefactor Qingbo's voice at this time? Chapter 8:35. Yuan Xiu. Gu Shengyin didn't hear a reply from inside and thought that there was no one inside. She stretched out her hand and was about to push the door open. Unexpectedly, the door opened from the inside. Yuan Xiu stood at the door and looked at her in surprise. Benefactor Qingbo, why are you? Why did you come over at this time? Gu Shengyin jumped into his arms easily. Yuan Xiu hugged her out of reflex. Today is a good day. I came out especially to play with you. Yuan Xiu counted the days and suddenly realized that today was the annual Lunar Lantern Festival. He was a little embarrassed. Benefactor Qingbo, I still have evening classes to do. Gu Xingyin stretched out her hand and patted his arm gently. You can always take a break once a year, right? I have never seen what the Lunar Lantern Festival is like. I heard from others that the Lantern Festival is for the people you like the most. That's why I'm here to look for you. Benefactor Qingba. Even though he was used to Gu Xingyin's confession from time to time, Yuan Xiu's face couldn't help but blush when he heard such words at this time. Gu Xingyin loved to see him like this. It was really rare to see such a gentle and innocent lover. She purposely added, if you're still unwilling, I'll find someone else. Before she could finish her sentence, she felt the arm that was hugging her tighten. Yuan Xiu's gentle voice came from above. Benefactor Qingba, please allow me to change my clothes. Change his clothes? Gu Xingyin was put down. She was ready to admire the picture of a handsome man taking off his clothes with great interest. However, Yuan Xiu didn't move for a long time. Gu Xingyin was puzzled. Yuan Xiu looked at the little white fox's eyes and said helplessly, Benefactor Qingba, can you please turn around? Gu Xingyin pretended not to hear. She seemed to hear Yuan Xiu sigh. Then, a green cloud fell from the sky and covered Gu Xingyin completely. It was Yuan Xiu's green monk robe. There was a very light sandalwood scent on his clothes, which was different from the lotus scent on Yuan Xiu's body. This was the scent of his body. It was as if that lotus fragrance would only appear on his body. As for other things, even the most intimate clothing, they would not be tainted in the slightest. Gu Xingyin didn't dislike the smell. On the contrary, she felt that it was easy to fall asleep just by smelling it. However, the current situation still annoyed her. Because she was covered by a piece of cloth, she couldn't see anything. Not only did she fail to get out, but she also often tripped over herself. When Gu Xingyin finally realized that she was not a real fox, but a demon who knew magic, Yuan Xiu had already taken the monk's robe off her body. This is an urgent matter. Benefactor Qingba, I apologize for offending you just now. Yuan Xiu's face was full of apology. Gu Xingyin did not pay attention to this. She raised her head and looked at Yuan Xiu, who had changed into ordinary clothes. He took off his monk's robe and changed into a blue robe. It wasn't made of expensive material, but when he wore it, it gave him a leisurely demeanor. His unshaven hair was tied up with a jade hairpin. A few strands of hair casually fell to the side of his face, adding a touch of elegance to his jade-like face. Some people needed to use luxurious clothes to show their charm, while others could wear ordinary clothes to show the bearing of a prince. Yuan Xiu was the latter. Chapter 8:36. Yuan Xiu, who had taken off his monk robe, looked less otherworldly, but the advantage of his appearance was fully displayed. Gu Xingyin clicked his tongue in admiration. My foresight is indeed not bad. Yuan Xiu, if you go out dressed like this, you should be able to receive many lanterns from girls tonight. The Moon Lantern Festival was also a day for lovers to express their feelings. If a girl saw a man she liked, she could naturally pass the lantern in her hand to him. If that person accepted it, it would mean that they were in love with each other, and it would be a golden wind and jade dew meeting. Yuan Xiu did not speak but bent down to carry Gu Xingyin. Along the way, many novice monks saw Yuan Xiu's dressing and were amazed. However, they did not ask too much. This martial uncle had not shaved his head and was naturally different from them. Yuan Xiu carried Gu Xingyin all the way out of Lotus Pedestal Sect and walked to the street outside. The sky had already darkened, but Lotus City tonight was more lively and bright than during the day. Countless lanterns were on the roofs of the buildings, on the treetops by the roadside, and in the hands of the tourists, turning Lotus City into a city of lights that night. Gu Xingyin was right. Even if Yuan Xiu's dressing was not outstanding, his handsome and otherworldly charms still attracted the attention of countless girls. Many beautiful girls shyly passed the lanterns in their hands to him, but they were all politely rejected by him. Gu Xingyin could not help but tease, Yuan Xiu, there are so many beautiful girls, but you're not moved by any of them? Yuan Xiu retracted his gaze from the bright lights in the distance and looked down at the little fox in his arms. Yuan Xiu is just a monk, how can I have such thoughts? Gu Xingyin did not comment. Don't lie to me. You obviously have not shaved your head and received your precepts, how can you be considered a monk? Logically speaking, Yuan Xiao had never been able to win against this little fox benefactor who had a sharp tongue. Hearing this, he only chuckled. That's because this little monk's mortal heart has yet to find someone who can move it. Gu Shengyin did not speak anymore. She laid lazily in Yuan Xiao's arms, instructing him to look for places with many people. Yuan Xiao had never experienced such a lively scene before, so she wasn't used to it. However, he didn't say anything and just followed Gu Shengyin's instructions. Don't you find it annoying? Gu Shengyin asked. I can see that you'd rather stay in your room and knock on the wooden fish. Yuan Xiao shook her head. It's a novel feeling to come out and take a look occasionally. He really didn't like this kind of noisy environment, but when he saw the little fox in his arms looking at him with interest, he felt his heart was at peace. Since he had come out with the little fox, of course he had to be happy. Gu Shengyin suddenly said, I remember there's a clear pond over there. It's full of lotus flowers. Let's go there and have a look. Yuan Xiao looked in the direction she was pointing at. It was dark and gloomy. It was obviously not lively there at all. Even the lanterns were much fewer than in other places. As long as the little fox was happy, it was fine. He walked in that direction. The place was very quiet. There was a pavilion beside the clear pond. 2 lanterns were hung at the corner of the pavilion, providing the only light in the place. The night breeze brought with it the unique fragrance of lotus flowers. Yuan Xiao only felt relaxed and happy. He didn't know why there was no one in such a wonderful place. Close your eyes, Gu Shengyin suddenly said. Chapter 8:37. Yuan Xiao didn't know what the little fox wanted to do, so he closed his eyes. Then he felt an emptiness in his arms. His fingers unconsciously bent, as if he wasn't used to it. All right, Yuan Xiao, open your eyes. He opened his eyes. In front of him was still the same dark pavilion. Where was the little fox? I'm over here. A soft voice came from behind him. Yuan Xiao's heart skipped a beat. He felt that something was wrong. He turned around, and his eyes suddenly widened. In the night wind, under the reflection of the lotus flowers in the pond, there was a slim and elegant beauty, holding a lantern and smiling. The night wind blew her thin skirt, as if it would be blown away by the wind in the next moment. At this moment, the beauty was looking at him with a smile. This handsome young master, I have a lantern in my hand. Would you be willing to give it to me? In her hand, there was a lantern that had appeared in her hand at some unknown time. Yuan Xiao looked at the woman in front of him, who was so beautiful that she didn't seem like an ordinary person. He only felt that a certain emptiness in his heart had quietly been filled. He slowly revealed a smile. This young monk is honored to have the benefactress's favor. He slowly walked forward and reached out to take the lantern that swayed unsteadily in the night wind. Gu Shengyin looked up and rolled her eyes at him. Young monk? Are you really planning to become a monk? Yuan Xiao shook his head and smiled. It's a habit that has been cultivated for many years. It's hard to change it in a short period of time. He looked at Gu Shengyin beside him with joy and curiosity. Master was talking about the root of love that he had planted for many generations, the person he loved wholeheartedly. Was that benefactress Qingbo? It was no wonder that as soon as he saw her, he felt incomparably close to her. Suddenly, a fragrant wind blew in front of him. Yuan Xiao only felt a burst of soft and fragrant jade suddenly close to his arms. The peerless beauty was very close to him. She whispered in his ear, Yuan Xiao, did you accept my lantern because of my face? No matter how calm Yuan Xiao's heart was, when had he ever experienced such a situation? Naturally, his ears were a little red from the heat. He said in a low voice, Benefactor Qingbo, please do not speak. You must know that beauty is emptiness. Gu Shengyin snickered in her heart. She moved closer to him until their bodies were almost touching. She sensed that his body had stiffened. She wanted to tease him even more. She said with some dissatisfaction, There are so many girls on the street who want to give you lanterns, but you don't accept them. I'm more beautiful than them, so when I give it to you, you take it. If this isn't because you like my beauty, then what is the reason? Yuan Xiao still shook her head. Benefactor Qingbo, you are different from them. Gu Shengyin pressed on, "What's the difference?" Yuan Xiao stared blankly for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through her mind. She looked down carefully. Sure enough, he saw a trace of seriousness in the woman's seemingly careless movements. He seemed to have understood something, and his restless heart suddenly calmed down. In this little monk's heart, they are just withered bones and beautiful women. Benefactor Qingba, on the other hand, is the only color in this little monk's spiritual altar. A faint blush appeared on Gu Shengyin's white jade-like face. This monk was so serious even when he was whispering sweet nothings. However, Yuan Xiao suddenly smiled. He gently reached out his free hand and held Gu Shengyin's hand. Master once said that I have the roots of love planted over many generations. I have a lover who loves me wholeheartedly. Yuan Xiao is lucky. It seems that I have already found this person. Chapter 8:38. Gu Shengyin and Yuan Xiao walked around the Moon Lantern Festival together. The only thing that was not harmonious was that during the latter half of the festival, Gu Shengyin appeared in her human form and caused quite a stir in Lotus City. Cultivators were usually more beautiful than mortals. Even if their appearance was not astonishing, after cultivation, they would remove the impurities in their body and reconstruct their foundation. No matter what, there would not be a person with an unsightly appearance. However, even in the cultivation world where beauties were everywhere, Gu Shengyin's appearance was enough to be called the number one beauty. Although Yuan Xiao's mind was calm, he still felt somewhat helpless when he saw countless people coveting his lover who had just interacted with his mind. He pulled Gu Shengyin to the side and said, "Qingba, why don't you change back to your original form?" Under Gu Shengyin's insistence, he finally omitted the word benefactor. Gu Shengyin deliberately asked, "Why?" How could Yuan Xiao not know what she was thinking? He followed her heart and admitted, "There are too many people coveting Qingba. This little monk is afraid that the meditation dharma that I have been cultivating for so many years will lose its effect." Gu Shengyin burst out laughing. No matter what a beauty did, it was beautiful, let alone when she laughed so happily. Yuan Xiao looked at her quietly and thought to himself that he would have to cultivate even more diligently in the future. With such a beauty by his side, it could be imagined that there would be many wild bees and butterflies in the future. Without enough strength, he would not be able to protect her. In the end, Gu Shengyin still changed into her white fox form and was sent back to the small courtyard by Yuan Xiao. "Qingba lives together with Bodhi Mami?" Yuan Xiao asked in surprise. Gu Shengyin was not surprised that he knew about Bodhi Mami and nodded. Since it was Bodhi Mami, Yuan Xiao decided to pay her a visit. He grew up in the Lotus Pedestal sect and was quite familiar with Bodhi Mami. Yuan Xiao. As expected, Bodhi Mami was very surprised when she saw Yuan Xiao. Gu Shengyin returned to her human form when she returned to the courtyard. She saw that Yuan Xiao and Bodhi Mami were obviously old acquaintances. She pulled Yuan Xiao into the room and gave them some space to talk. Bodhi Mami was very experienced and knowledgeable. How could she not understand when she saw the two of them like this? It turned out that the root of Yuan Xiao's love was actually Qingba's. Bodhi Mami had known about this matter all along. Now that it was confirmed, her heart felt at ease. But she still felt a trace of regret when she looked at Yuan Xiao. She was from the Lotus Pedestal sect. Although she had established her own sect, she could still be considered half a guardian of the Lotus Pedestal sect. Naturally, she hoped that the Lotus Pedestal sect would become better and better. Yuan Xiao's aptitude was the best among all the Buddhist disciples she had seen in so many years. She had no doubt that if Yuan Xiao were to devote herself to studying Buddhist doctrine, her achievements would far surpass those of the Lotus Pedestal sect. Couldn't, she could not force S's Mami's. However, Bodhi Mami had thought it through. This was the Lotus Pedestal sect. If it was like other Buddhist sects, fighting for resources for benefits, it would be no different from other sections. How could it be called the Lotus Pedestal sect? She looked at Yuan Xiao lovingly. "I know what happened to you and I won't say anything about it. I only hope that you can find the right person and live happily for the rest of your life." Yuan Xiao put his palms together and bowed to Bodhi Mami. Yuan Xiao knows that she is the one destined for me. Thank you for your blessings. When Gu Shengyin came out, Yuan Xiao had already left the courtyard. Chapter 839. The next day, Yuan Xiao went to find his teacher, Venerable Jing Ming, and explain the matter between him and Qing Bo. Since you've moved your heart, my lotus pedestal sect can't keep you. Venerable Jing Ming sighed. Yuan Xiao bowed and solemnly kowtowed 9 times to Venerable Jing Ming. That afternoon, he packed his things and left the lotus pedestal sect. In Bodhi Nanny's small courtyard, there was one more person who often swept the courtyard. Gu Shengyin felt that this kind of life was actually quite good. The years were peaceful. If Nun Wuxin didn't exist, it would be good for her and Yuan Xiao to find a similar place to live a peaceful life. Unfortunately, with her identity in this life, there was no way she could live a peaceful life. There was a rumor that a new king of the demon clan had been born. It was in Lotus City. One word shocked the world. The king of the demon clan wasn't some powerful person, but a unique king. Only a few extremely noble bloodlines could receive this title. No matter which bloodline it was, if she was allowed to grow up, she would be a great threat to everyone. The human cultivators didn't want such a king to appear in the demon clan, and the powerful people of the demon clan also didn't want a king who could unify the demon clan. The thing that Gu Shengyin was worried about still happened. According to the rumor, the future king of the demon clan was in Lotus City. Although there was no way to know whether this news was true or false, Gu Shengyin already knew that many people were secretly rushing to Lotus City. After living here for a period of time, Gu Shengyin already had a good impression of this city. Although the Lotus Pedestal sect was powerful, it was still alone. If someone really came to find trouble, the peaceful days in Lotus City would come to an end. She went to find Bodhi Nanny. Bodhi Nanny seemed to have expected this. She sighed and said, "I guess that you would come to find me soon. Miss Qing Bo, it's good for you to leave this place and avoid the limelight, whether it's for your own sake or for Lotus City's sake." Of course, Gu Shengyin understood this. She was just here to say goodbye to the person who had taken care of her for so long. Walking out of Bodhi Nanny's courtyard, she saw Yuan Xiao standing at the side with a smile on his face. He was carrying a small package in his hand. Gu Shengyin stared at him with wide eyes. She hadn't had the time to tell Yuan Xiao about this, but from Yuan Xiao's reaction, it was obvious that she knew. Yuan Xiao smiled and said, "I was just guessing. I didn't expect it to be true." Yuan Xiao is blessed with the supreme bloodline of the demon race. Gu Shengyin's heart warmed. She whispered, "You don't mind?" Being with her meant that in the future, he might have to bear great dangers and could no longer live a peaceful life like now. Yuan Xiao didn't answer her question. Instead, he sighed and took 2 steps forward, pulling her into his embrace. "I only care if I will be too far away from you in the future and not be worthy of you." A cry of surprise came from the door. Gu Shengyin raised her head from Yuan Xiao's embrace and saw Yun Shu standing at the door of the courtyard, covering her eyes with her white and tender hands. The growth of the demon race was slow. She still looked like a teenager and would look like this for many years to come. Gu Shengyin noticed that she was also carrying a small package on her shoulder. Chapter 840. Gu Shengyin was surprised. "Yun Shu, what are you doing?" In her opinion, staying in Lotus City and cultivating with Bodhi Nanny was the most suitable path for Yun Shu. Yun Shu giggled and said, "I grew up with Qing Bo. Of course, wherever Qing Bo goes, I'll follow." Her world had always been simple. The first creature she saw when she gained sentience was Qing Bo. In Yun Shu's heart, Qing Bo was the closest person to her. Of course, she wanted to be with Qing Bo and never be separated. Gu Shengyin felt her eyes heat up. She looked at Yuan Xiao beside her and then looked at Yun Shu, who was not far away. Suddenly, she revealed a smile. "We'll always be together." No one and nothing could separate them. Before the people sent by various forces to gather information arrived, 3 people dressed in low-key clothes had already quietly left Lotus City. Gu Shengyin had taken the appearance-changing pill. Her face was too conspicuous and could easily cause unnecessary trouble. The three of them cultivated while changing their residence from time to time. Unexpectedly, more than 10 years passed just like that. Those cultivators and demons went to Lotus City. Most of them were blocked outside by the Lotus Platform sex array. After the rest went in, they confirmed that there were no demons with the bloodline of the sovereign stage inside. The crowd did not give up and searched everywhere. After many years of fruitless searching, they slowly put this matter to the back of their minds. Perhaps it was really just a rumor? Otherwise, why was there no additional news after so many years? Nowadays, not many people still cared about this rumor. However, Gu Shengyin and the others were still very careful and did not give themselves away. They had already lived in this town for a year. This place was not big. The cultivators in the entire city were at most in the golden core stage. They were not much of a threat to them. During this period of time, they lived quite leisurely. Gu Shengyin was notified by the system that Nun Wuxin had arrived. She frowned. Wasn't she confined? She still remembered that Nun Wuxin had angered the Lotus Pedestal sect and had been grounded by the sect master of the Water Moon sect. The system replied, she has also been locked up for more than 10 years. Her master loves her disciple dearly, and the Water Moon sect master also felt that after all these years, her temperament should have been smoothed out a bit, so she was released. Temper his temper? Nun Wuxin's hatred for the demon clan had become a kind of morbid obsession. In the cultivation world, it was called a heart demon. In the modern society of the technological era, it was a typical mental illness. Gu Shengyin did not believe that a mere 10 years could change her personality. Sure enough, in less than 10 days, she heard the rumor that the heartless nun had tortured and killed a black bear spirit. Gu Shengyin, Yuan Xiu, and Yun Shu discussed for a while before they decided to leave. With their current strength, although they were not completely powerless against Master Wuxin, they would not be able to gain the upper hand. Needless to say, Gu Shengyin's identity was not suitable to be exposed. However, some people could not be avoided just because you wanted to. Gu Shengyin had clearly followed the route provided by the system and walked in the opposite direction of Master Wuxin's goal, but they still met her. Looking at the black-robed Taoist nun with sharp eyes at the city gate, Gu Shengyin hurriedly pulled Yun Shu into a nearby restaurant. System. She was silent for a moment. What happened to going in the other direction? Chapter 841. The system was also somewhat helpless. Host, I've analyzed Nun Wuxin's original route. She was clearly going in the opposite direction, but I don't know why she changed her mind. The woman and the system fell into a mysterious silence. Gu Shengyin secretly cursed the so-called plot. Needless to say, it was definitely the power of the plot. Gu Shengyin grabbed Yun Shu's somewhat cold fingers and motioned for her not to be nervous. In her bloodline memory, there was a secret inherited technique that could conceal her demonic aura. As long as the person's cultivation level was not too much higher than hers, and they were wholeheartedly investigating, they would not be able to detect anything wrong. It was the same for Yun Shu. She was a spirit of vegetation, and there was no trace of hostility in her. She also cultivated under Bodhi Mami, and the cultivation methods she learned came from Buddhism. It was also a cultivation method that could conceal her identity as a demon. As long as Nun Wuxin was not perverted enough to stare at every pedestrian on the road to see if they were demonic, the possibility of them being discovered was not high. However, Gu Shengyin felt that things were not that simple. The so-called plot would always inadvertently trap her in various ways. Good things did not come true, but bad things did. A beam of sword light slashed up from downstairs, cutting a table beside Gu Shengyin and the others in half. The waiter, who was about to clean up the table, was so frightened that his face turned pale and he took 2 steps back. Gu Shengyin glanced at him. The waiter looked no more than 16 or 17 years old. His clean and delicate face was now so pale that there was no trace of blood. A terrifying pressure descended, and the figure in the black Taoist robe walked up the wooden stairs step by step. Gu Shengyin held Yun Shu's hand and felt that the little girl's palm was sweating nervously. She sized up Nun Wuxin. A cultivator's age could not be determined from their appearance. Based on appearance alone, Nun Wuxin could actually be called a beauty. However, the murderous aura on her face was too strong. Ordinary people who looked at her would only be intimidated by her aura and would not really notice her appearance. At this moment, the owner of the restaurant walked out. He felt his heart ache when he saw the windows and floor that had been destroyed by one person and one sword. When he saw the culprit, he scolded, "Where did this monk come from? How dare he come to someone else's restaurant and cause trouble?" He couldn't finish his sentence because Nun Wuxin glanced at him. The shopkeeper felt as if his throat was being squeezed by something invisible. He had a feeling that if he continued to speak, this terrifying Taoist nun would strike his body with her saber. She would really kill him. Nun Wuxin flicked her finger and a spiritual bead fell into the shopkeeper's palm. She said coldly, "Take it as compensation." The boss didn't dare to say anything more. He just stood aside with the spirit bead in his hand. He actually wanted to leave, but there were still customers in the shop. There were many people eating on the second floor. Heartless Nun's sword had scared away many timid guests, but there were still people who were ready to watch the fun. Gu Xingyin and the others did not leave. Nun Wuxin raised the sword in her hand and pointed it at the waiter who was trembling with fear. "How dare you, evil creature, to mingle among humans? Today I will get rid of evil for the people." The waiter's body trembled even more violently when he heard that. Gu Xingyin could see that there was no trace of blood on his face. He was even breaking out in a cold sweat. The shopkeeper, who was standing aside, looked at the waiter worriedly. "Nun, are you misunderstanding something? Abai is our waiter. He has been here for a year. He is very good, well-behaved and diligent. He often uses his salary to buy food for the homeless children on the street." He didn't finish his words because Nun Wuxin's sword had cut at his feet. Recommended the super good gay friend Huan Chu's book, Transmigration System, a guide to Prince Charming. It specializes in conquering all kinds of Prince Charming. There is always one that suits you. Chapter 842. The heartless nun said coldly, "If you say one more word, I'll treat you as an accomplice of this evil creature." The boss tactfully shut his mouth and only looked at the waiter named Ah Bai with a worried gaze. The heartless nun looked at Ah Bai as if she was looking at an inanimate object. Her eyes were filled with hatred and cruelty. She slowly raised the sword in her hand. Her movements were slow, as if she enjoyed watching her prey tremble before death. As if his desire to live was too strong, the young man called Ah Bai finally spoke in a trembling voice, "I've never done anything bad. Why do you want to kill me?" A bloodthirsty look flashed across the heartless nun's eyes. She looked at Ah Bai expressionlessly. "Your mistake is that you're a demon." As soon as she said this, the remaining customers in the restaurant were in an uproar. In this world, cultivation was prevalent. Ordinary people were not very repulsed or afraid of demons. Someone immediately said, "Nun, you're also a cultivator. Why don't you accumulate some merit for yourself? I've lived here for many years. Abai is really a good child. Once, my son was almost kidnapped by a bad person. He was the one who helped me find him." The heartless nun laughed coldly. "A demon is a demon. I don't care what he's done. I only know that I, the heartless nun, have never left a single demon alive." The sword in her hand suddenly shook. A bright sword light slashed toward Abai's head. Abai was already scared out of his wits. He could only watch in despair as the sword light reached his head. There seemed to be a soft sigh in his ears. Several exquisite shadows of golden lotuses appeared in his dazed eyes, blocking the sword light above his head. The heartless nun put away her sword and looked sharply at Yuan Xiu. A Buddhist disciple? Apart from the demon clan, the people she hated the most were undoubtedly the Buddhist sect disciples. That was because those people were always full of benevolence. Their hypocrisy disgusted her. Especially that lotus pedestal sect. They even created a lotus city and protected the demons. Once her strength was strong enough, she would definitely destroy the so-called Wenshan array with a single slash. Yuan Xiu put his palms together. "I'm just a Buddhist disciple." Nun Wuxin's gaze darted around him and suddenly stopped on Yun Shu, who looked a little uneasy. She suddenly laughed out loud. What an unexpected harvest today. I originally thought that I had only found a little rabbit spirit. Who would have thought that there was actually a tree spirit hiding here? She looked at Yuan Xiao coldly. You actually allowed yourself to fall and mix around with a demon. If you know what's good for you, get out of the way and I can spare your life. Otherwise, I'll kill you as well. She seemed to have recognized Yuan Xiao's identity and did not intend to let her go. Yuan Xiao's expression turned cold, but she still said in a gentle voice, This benefactor Bai has no sin of killing. Yuan Xiao, who is beside me, has been taught by Buddhism since she was young. Abbas is also a cultivator. Evil can be punished, but I'm afraid it's not good to kill the innocent. Killing the innocent? Once again, Nun Wuxin raised the sword in her hand. They're demons. Based on this alone, they can't be considered innocent. All the demons must die. Gu Xingyin looked coldly at the woman with a deranged gaze. Nun Wuxin's appearance clearly showed that she had a very deep inner demon. Even if she did not have the sin of killing the nine-tailed white fox, she would not be able to pass the inner demon tribulation during the advancement. Chapter 843. Even though Yuan Xiao had recuperated well, he was still displeased to meet such an unreasonable person. He could only say, If you insist, I won't hold back. The heartless nun seemed to have heard a joke. Hold back? Just you? She could see the realm of this Buddhist cultivator at a glance. Although it was extremely shocking that he had reached such a realm at his age, there was still a gap of a few hundred years between him and her. In another 100 years, you might be my opponent. I'll say it again, get out of the way. Yuan Xiao shook his head and formed a seal with both hands, making a gesture to attack. Take this opportunity to leave. Gu Xingyin heard this voice in her mind and understood Yuan Xiao's meaning in an instant. She pulled the dazed Bai to the side. A green light flashed from Yuan Xiao's body and the three of them disappeared without a trace. The heartless nun, who had been paying attention to them, was furious. She forced Yuan Xiao back with a sword and disappeared in a flash. Then, Yuan Xiao's figure moved and disappeared from the restaurant. The people in the restaurant only heaved a sigh of relief when these people left. I wonder if that young master can win against that evil nun? Someone muttered. The owner looked out of the window worriedly, hoping that Bai could escape. However, he also knew that regardless of whether Bai could escape this disaster, he would never return to this place. Gu Xingyin and the other two were stopped by the heartless nun on a grassland outside the city. The heartless nun slashed her sword at Yuan Xiao. Among the three of them, Gu Xingyin's cultivation was the strongest. Only Gu Xingyin had the ability to block this attack. She gritted her teeth and a green light flashed in her ink-black eyes. Her originally ordinary face seemed to have a different charm at this moment. She quickly formed a seal with both hands. A white light formed in her hands and met the sword light. Gu Xingyin groaned and took 2 steps back. Yuan Xiao hurriedly supported her. Qingba, are you all right? At the same time, she hated herself for being useless. At this time, she couldn't help at all. Gu Xingyin calmed down the churning qi and blood in her body. Sure enough, with her current strength, it was still very difficult for her to take Master Wuxin's sword head-on. Nun Wuxin exclaimed in surprise and took a closer look at the woman whom she had ignored from the beginning to the end. After taking a look, she smiled. There's actually a fish that slipped through the net. Your concealment technique is not bad. Even I was almost fooled. After she finished speaking, her expression turned cold. But now is just the right time. Let me send you 3 evildoers to hell. A golden light flashed beside Gu Xingyin, and Yuan Xiao appeared beside her. Nun Wuxin looked at him, her eyes full of murderous intent. A Buddhist cultivator who mingles with 2 evildoers is not a good person either. Today, I'll clean up the Buddhist sect for you. Before Yuan Xiao could say anything, Gu Xingyin had already lost her patience. She coldly said to Nun Wuxin, Bah, shameless old thing. Do you think you're so shameless? Cleaning up the Buddhist sect for you? Why don't you help your master kill this unfilial disciple of yours with a sword? She knew what kind of words were the most irritating to this kind of rude and unreasonable person who did things her own way. It was useless to reason with this kind of person. Only by being more rude and unreasonable than her could one control her. Sure enough, Nun Wuxin's face turned livid with anger after hearing Gu Xingyin's words. Chapter 844. She raised her hand and swung her sword. There was no pattern to this attack. It was obvious that she had been angered by Gu Xingyin. Yuan Xiu was already prepared. He put his palms together and a huge illusory Buddha statue appeared behind him. It reached out and caught Nun Wuxin's sword. Good boy. I'll take care of you first, then I'll get rid of those little demons. She laughed coldly and focused on dealing with Yuan Xiu. Gu Xingyin watched for a while and knew that it was only a matter of time before Yuan Xiu was defeated. She pulled Yun Shu over. Yun Shu, I remember you have an escape technique. Later. She told Yun Shu everything in detail, and Yun Shu nodded repeatedly. As for the little boy, Bai, he followed Yun Shu closely. He looked a little older than Yun Shu, but Yun Shu held his hand as if she was holding a little brother. Gu Xingyin walked to the other side and slowly chanted something in her heart. Her eyes slowly turned emerald green. A breeze blew around them. It was so light that Nun Wuxin, who was fighting with Yuan Xiu, did not notice it. While the two of them were in the midst of their battle, a huge demonic beast phantom suddenly appeared behind Gu Xingyin. The demon beast seemed to be living in the clouds. Its entire body was shrouded in white mist, and only a few strands of white fur could be seen. Nun Wuxin was shocked when the illusory demon beast appeared. She looked straight at Gu Xingyin with a trace of vigilance in her eyes. She could clearly see this demon's realm. How could she summon such a powerful Dharma idol with her strength? Unless, this little demon's bloodline was very strong. Nun Wuxin's eyes lit up when she thought of this. She hated demons all her life. What she wanted to do most was to kill all the demons in the world. Everyone knew that the stronger a demon's bloodline was, the more powerful it would be in the future. Nun Wuxin felt happy just thinking about killing a powerful demon in the future while it was still a child. However, very quickly she saw that the demonic beast shadow, whose true form could not be seen, seemed to have opened its mouth. A burst of white mist that covered the sky and covered the earth sprayed towards her. She subconsciously slashed out with her sword, only to find that it was not an attack at all. The entire grassland was shrouded in whiteness. Master Wuxin was surprised to find that her divine sense and five senses could only perceive things within 1 meter of her. What kind of method was this? She slashed out again and again, but to no avail. As for Yuan Xiu, the moment the white mist appeared, she felt her arm being grabbed by a hand. Gu Xingyin's voice sounded in his ear. Come with me. The two of them came to the place where Yun Shu and Bai were. Yun Shu, who was already prepared, moved and instantly turned into a small tree the size of an adult. 3 branches stretched out and wrapped around the 3 of them. With a flash of green light, it burrowed into the ground and disappeared. When the 3 of them reappeared, they were already in a mountain range thousands of li away. When they appeared, Gu Xingyin almost lost her balance and was supported by Yuan Xiu. She did not look well. It was obvious that the move that trapped Nun Wuxin had consumed a lot of her demon power. My maze can trap her for a while. After she comes out, she won't be able to find out which direction we left in. I guess she won't be able to catch up with us, Gu Xingyin said. Yuan Xiu silently handed her a small bottle. Gu Xingyin took it and looked at it. It was a bottle of vitality-replenishing pills. She smiled and swallowed 2 of them. Yuan Xiu looked at her silently. His free hand clenched into a fist so tightly that blue veins popped out. Chapter 845. It was because he wasn't strong enough that she had to pay such a huge price to protect him and the others. He secretly swore in his heart that next time, he would definitely not let her do this again. And that Wu Xian. He lowered his eyes, concealing a trace of fierceness that flashed through them. Gu Xingyin meditated for a while and recovered a lot of strength. She then looked up at Bai, who was sitting on the side and looking at them. This little white rabbit demon had clearly just taken human form and was very pure and naive. Gu Shengyin thought for a while and felt that it was inconvenient to bring him along. Moreover, the three of them did not have a fixed place to stay, which was not a good thing for him. Abai, you're called Abai, right? It's not convenient for us to bring you along. What do you plan to do? Gu Shengyin asked. Abai looked up when he heard that. He thought for a while and shook his head. He looked at Gu Shengyin pitifully and whispered, Can I follow you? I'm very diligent and can do all kinds of work. That little look made Gu Shengyin's heart soften, but she still rejected him. No, our journey will not be peaceful. If you follow us, it will be unsafe. I'll tell you a place to go. There's a place called Lotus City in the north. It's very friendly to the demon race. You can live a peaceful life there, she said to him. Abai's eyes lit up. Really? Won't someone find out my identity and chase me away or kill me? Gu Shengyin nodded. She told Abai the detailed route. Abai could stay in the restaurant for more than a year without being discovered, which meant that he was quite good at disguising himself. As long as he did not meet a paranoid demon like Master Wu Xian along the way, there should not be any big problems. The few of them parted ways here. Abai went to Lotus City. Gu Shengyin and the other two continued to walk and stop as they pleased. More than 10 years passed like that. Yuan Xiu's strength had improved by leaps and bounds in these 10 years. Gu Shengyin had the bloodline of the nine-tailed Arctic fox. She had the bloodline of the inherited bloodline. Her cultivation speed was extremely fast and she had no bottlenecks. Even so, she was only at the same level as him. Poor Yunshu. She had to spend every day with these two cultivation freaks. Fortunately, she was just a tree without much ambition. She was happy with the sun and the soil. Otherwise, she would have been tortured to death by these two people. On this day, in a small courtyard, Yuan Xiu and Yun Shu sat at the stone table in the courtyard. Yuan Xiu's expression was indifferent, but Yun Shu was clearly worried. Yuan Xiu had already set up an isolation array in the courtyard. In the room, Gu Shengyin was breaking through. She was about to grow the fourth tail of her Dharma form. The tail of the nine-tailed white fox Dharma idol grew according to the cultivation speed and realm. Originally, according to the normal speed, the second tail would grow in about 10 years, the third in about 20 years, and the fourth in about 50 years. However, Gu Shengyin's talent could not be measured by common sense. Moreover, she was blessed by the heavenly Tao. She was accompanied by Yuan Xiu, the winner of every life. In the past few decades, the two of them had encountered countless treasures in secret realms. Their strength was also growing at an extremely terrifying speed. Gu Shengyin had already decided that if she could successfully grow the fourth tail this time, the first thing she would do was to find that old Taoist nun, Wu Xian, to settle accounts. In these years, she had become more and more rampant. Yuan Xiu, who had been waiting outside the courtyard, suddenly had a change in expression. He told Yun Shu, who was unaware of the situation, to stay there and not move. After that, he quickly flashed into Gu Shengyin's room. Chapter 846. Gu Shengyin's current situation was not good. Actually, it was not bad. After all, her fourth Dharma idol tail had successfully grown out. However, her situation wasn't exactly good. When Yuan Xiu entered, he saw Gu Shengyin sitting upright on the ground with her eyes tightly shut. There did not seem to be anything wrong with her, but that was just how it looked. Yuan Xiu frowned. He had come over because he sensed that something was wrong with Qingbo. But at this moment he could not tell what was wrong with her. Until Gu Shengyin opened her eyes. Her eyes were as beautiful as usual, but there was something else in those serene and deep green eyes. Gu Shengyin secretly cursed herself for being careless. Her advancement had been very smooth, but she did not expect that when she successfully grew out her fourth tail, her mind would be distracted. It was this moment that caused her to fall into her own trap. The world's impression of a fox's charm was not groundless. Foxes were good at bewitching people, bewildering formations, and seducing people. Not to mention the nine-tailed white fox with the purest and noblest bloodline of the fox clan. Gu Xingyin felt the waves of passion in her body grow stronger and stronger. She secretly gritted her teeth. She glanced at Yuan Xiao, who was walking in, and gritted her teeth to maintain her calm. She said, "Yuan Xiao, I'm fine. You can go out first." Yuan Xiao did not move. If he really believed it, he would not be Yuan Xiao. Gu Xingyin watched as this handsome man approached her and squatted down. His unique scent of lotus hit her in the face, causing Gu Xingyin's face to turn slightly red. Yuan Xiao was still frowning. He said, "What happened to you?" Gu Xingyin could not help but reach out and grab his arm. Her whole body slid into his embrace. Feeling the coolness of his embrace, she could not help but sigh comfortably. When Yuan Xiao touched the hot body in his arms, he finally realized what had happened to Gu Xingyin. His expression became slightly uncomfortable. The two of them had been together for dozens of years. Although they had long understood each other's feelings, they had never done anything out of line. It was not that their feelings were not deep enough, but because of Gu Sheng's special physique, before his cultivation reached a certain level, it was very easy for him to hurt his foundation. After all, the nine-tailed Arctic fox had a special physique. When she could not control herself, the normal love between a man and a woman would very likely turn into a one-sided plundering. Gu Xingyin raised her head slightly and looked at her lover's flawless handsome face at a close distance. She chuckled and exhaled, "I told you that I was fine, but you still came closer." Her tone was 2 parts complaining, 5 parts acting coquettishly, and 3 parts subconsciously sweet and seductive. Yuan Xiao's eyes darkened as she calmly said, "I'm worried about you." Gu Xingyin only felt her body heat up a little. She had never known how to be reserved in front of Yuan Xiao. Hearing this, she leaned her body even closer. Her whole body softly leaned into Yuan Xiao's arms, leaning close to him. "I didn't want you to see me. You came in yourself," she said, slowly reaching out her hand to touch Yuan Xiao's face. "Tell me, do you want to leave now?" she asked with a chuckle. Her green eyes were charming and teasing. Yuan Xiao's eyes became deeper. He looked at the world's most seductive woman in his arms and resisted the urge to turn his head away. "Your body," Gu Xingyin had already found his lips and tongue. "I know my body best." "I only know that your body," she did not speak. She only moved slightly. Sensing the man's body stiffen, Gu Xingyin laughed with satisfaction. Chapter 847. Gu Xingyin was originally fine, but now something was wrong. She looked at the man beside her who seemed to be unsatisfied and quickly pressed down on the hand that was creeping up her body. "I was wrong, really?" She tried to widen her eyes and make herself look more pitiful. However, she didn't know that her face was flushed at this moment. Her exposed skin was full of red marks, and the corners of her eyes and brows were intoxicated with lust. The effect of such a stare was completely different from what she wanted. Yuan Xiao's eyes darkened. When Gu Xingyin saw him like this, she remembered how she had cried after being bullied. She wanted to cry but had no tears. "I was really wrong. You're amazing. Really, I can't take it anymore." Yuan Xiao smiled and stopped teasing her. He said softly, "All right, I won't tease you anymore. Have a good rest." Although this man was sometimes bad, he was a man of his words. Gu Xingyin was relieved. The fatigue from her body rushed up in an instant. With her lover beside her, she quickly fell asleep. Yuan Xiao was in good spirits. He lowered his head and looked at Gu Xingyin's beautiful sleeping face for a while. He finally remembered that Yun Shu was in the courtyard. He got up quietly, put on his clothes and carefully covered her with the quilt. After gently kissing her forehead, he quietly closed the door. As soon as Yuan Xiao came out, Yun Shu, who had been waiting in the courtyard, anxiously greeted him. "Why were you gone for so long? Is Qingbo okay?" "I'll go see her." Yuan Xiao grabbed the anxious Yun Shu. How could he let anyone see Qingbo in this state? Not even Yun Shu. "Qingbo is very tired now. She just fell asleep. Don't disturb her now." Yun Shu had a sudden realization and quickly nodded. "Okay, I'll go see her when she wakes up." Why didn't she think of it? Qingbo's condition must be very serious if Yuan Xiao came out after such a long time. She must be very tired now. Yuan Xiu looked at the dazed Yun Shu and suddenly felt a little apologetic. He asked, "You have been here all this time?" Yun Shu did not know what he wanted to ask and could only nod. Yuan Xiu said apologetically, "I didn't know I would be in there for so long. You can go and rest by yourself." Yun Shu shook his head. "You and Qingba are both inside, so of course I have to keep watch. What if someone comes to disturb us?" Yuan Xiu felt even more embarrassed. He hurriedly said, "It's fine now. I'll keep watch. You should go and rest." Even if he was a demon, his body wouldn't be able to take it if he didn't sleep for several days and nights. Yun Shu also felt a little tired, so she reminded Yuan Xiu and Qing Bo to remember to wake her up when they woke up before going to bed. This silly child. Yuan Xiu looked at her small back and shook her head. In terms of age, Yun Shu was older than Yuan Xiu, but she always looked like a little girl. Compared to Gu Shengyin and Yuan Xiu, she was much more naive. The two of them almost treated her like a child. Gu Shengyin slept soundly. Thanks to the special physique of this body, after she woke up, she didn't feel anything other than a little sore all over her body. Her previous clothes had already been torn to pieces. She got up and found a new set of clothes to wear before leaving the room. "You're awake?" Yuan Xiu looked at her with a normal expression and asked with concern, "Do you feel uncomfortable?" Gu Shengyin shook her head. "It's okay." Hearing this, Yuan Xiu laughed and said in a low voice, "Then I can rest assured." Gu Shengyin did not hear clearly and asked subconsciously, "What?" Yuan Xiu smiled. "My wife is gifted." Chapter 848. Gu Shengyin was suddenly teased and coughed calmly. She thought for a moment and decided to change the topic. Yuan Xiu frowned. "You want to deal with Nun Wuxin?" In his opinion, the safest way was to wait until the two of them were stronger and had full confidence before dealing with her. Gu Shengyin also knew that this was the safest way, but every day, the system would tell her where Nun Wuxin had gone and how many Yao she had killed. Some things, you probably know, are not the same as someone revealing the bloody truth in front of her. Also, Nun Wuxin deserved to die. Even in modern society, a person who tortured and killed so many animals would be sentenced, not to mention that the animals she killed were all demons with spiritual intelligence. Gu Shengyin only said to Yuan Xiu, "In the past 10 years, Nun Wuxin has killed a total of 1370 Yao." This number was truly terrifying to the extreme. Before the statistics were out, ordinary people would think that Nun Wuxin often killed Yao, but when Gu Shengyin revealed the number, Yuan Xiu fell silent. On average, she killed 1 Yao every 3 days. There were not many Yao to begin with. No powerful Yao could bear the loss of more than 1,000 Yao. Yuan Xiu thought that she had the royal blood of the Yao and felt a trace of this. He could not help but feel sorry for her. Every day, she felt so many of her own kind being killed. She must have been in great pain, right? He said softly, "Okay, let's go kill her and avenge those Yao who died unjustly." Gu Shengyi knew that he might have misunderstood something, but she did not explain. She could not explain the existence of the system. A year later, Nun Wuxin, who was hated by countless Yao, had her heart pierced by a claw. That person wrote down her sins on the mountain wall next to her corpse. The killings she had committed shocked all the cultivators in Yao. The person who left the message called herself the Nine-Tailed Arctic Fox. She scolded the powerful Yao for being useless and allowing such a murderer to kill their own kind. While the demon race mighty figures were embarrassed, they were more concerned about the demon race's self-proclaimed nine-tailed white fox. Countless demons were looking for this demon who claimed to be the nine-tailed Arctic fox. The Water Moon sect was also furious and vowed to find the murderer who killed the heartless nun. Unfortunately, 200 years had passed, and no one had gotten any news about that person. 200 years ago, it was someone else who came looking for her. 200 years later, it was Gu Shengyin's turn to find someone else. Something big happened in the cultivation world. All the territories of the demon clan above the incarnation stage were all occupied. The people involved kept it a secret, and those who did not know delayed the best time to deal with it. By the time the human race reacted, the demon race had already changed their leader. They were no longer wary of each other. Gu Shengyin used her bloodline and strength to suppress all opposing voices and became the new queen of the demon race. She did not avoid talking about Nun Wuxin and said that she was the one who did it. Wuxin deserved to die. This was her reply to the Water Moon sect, and it was so domineering. The Grand Elder of the Water Moon sect was extremely angry. Unfortunately, the current Yao clan was not something that their Water Moon sect could afford to provoke. The sect master of the Water Moon sect was also unwilling to clean up the mess caused by the death of that troublesome junior sister, so this matter was left unsettled. As for the demon race, everyone knew that in addition to their queen's peerless appearance and strength, she also had a human lover who was very close to her. There was once an elder of the demon race who objected to this, but he was sent flying by Gu Shengyin. The queen was not arbitrary in other matters, but when it came to her lover, no one could touch her reverse scale. Give birth to a pure demon race bloodline with a demon race? Do you want this queen to die now to make room for you? Once this was said, no one dared to mention this matter again. Yuan Xiu turned her head and looked at her lover who was wholeheartedly protecting her, and the corners of her mouth curved slightly. Master, thank you for insisting on not shaving my head. Chapter 849. As a monster, Gu Shengyin had enough time to accompany her lover in this life. The two spent a long time together until they grew old together. When she opened her eyes again, she was in a stuffy place. It was very dark and there was no light, but it was very comfortable to lie down and she didn't feel stuffy. System. Gu Shengyin felt a little strange. Was she kidnapped in a small dark room? The system seemed to know her guess and replied, "Host, don't worry, please accept the memory transmission." Gu Shengyin let the system transmit the original memory and the plot of the world into her mind. Mermaid? From the past to the present? Gu Shengyin blinked in the dark, silently digesting the plot of this world. The original Yin Yang was a mermaid born in the South Sea. Her race had always been mysterious and had no interaction with human beings. Occasionally they were seen on the sea, but they only left a few beautiful legends. Lian Yang didn't have a clear understanding of human beings. She only heard a few stories from the human world when she was young, so she was a little curious and unfamiliar with them. However, she didn't know what she had done. Once, when she went out to sea to play, she encountered a huge storm. She was so scared that she quickly hid in a huge clam shell in the sea. However, she didn't expect that when she woke up, everything had changed and everything had changed. And she lost all her memories. When she woke up, she was in a very strange place. When the man saw her, he was shocked and excited, which scared her. She didn't understand the human language, so she didn't know that the man said, "I'm rich now." She saw that the man gave her delicious food and was very gentle to her. She thought that she met a good man. But she didn't know that 2 days later, an average-looking girl walked into the room. Average-looking was Lian Yang's own evaluation of her. After all, mermaids were all beautiful people. The girl's appearance was considered beautiful among human beings, but in Lian Yang's eyes, it was not attractive at all. Gu Shengyin, who read the plot, removed the clam shell. The man was called by Gang, a white-collar worker in a company. He brought the clam shell back when he was swimming at the beach. Because he couldn't open it, he kept it at home, waiting for an opportunity to see if he could sell it. That girl was his university classmate and also his girlfriend. Her name was Xiao Zi. Xiao Zixin was arrogant and had seen a lot in the entertainment industry. She had already looked down on her boyfriend, Bai Gang. Originally, she wanted to break up with him this time, but after seeing Lian Yang, she gave up the idea. She had a role that she really wanted to get, but with her looks and ability, it was not enough to move the director. She originally wanted to recommend herself, but when she saw Lian Yang, she knew that she had a better idea. After coaxing Bai Gang to let her take Lian Yang away, Xiao Zi drove Lian Yang into the director's home. When they came out, Xiao Zi got the role she wanted. But Lian Yang never came out of the director's house again. That director was a pervert. He liked to abuse people, and the more beautiful the person being abused, the more pleasure he would get. Lian Yang had been treated cruelly by him. Until one day, an idea flashed through her mind. The sharpness hidden under her round nails easily cut the director's throat. At this time, Xiaozi had become famous because of the role the director gave her. She took good care of Lian Yang, the lucky star, who brought her good luck. However, after coming in and seeing the scene, she was scared out of her wits. Chapter 850. It turned out that the seemingly harmless mermaid was not really harmless. Xiaozi didn't know about mermaids. She only read about them in Western fairy books. This kind of creature with a human body and a fishtail was called mermaid. She didn't dare to take a step closer. Looking at Lian Yang, who was still in the closed water tank, she dialed the police. She didn't dare to tell the truth. She only said that she came to visit the director to ask about the movie and saw this. The mermaid's strong body and recovery ability made it impossible to find any scars on Lian Yang's body. Xiaozi did not dare to say what the director had done in private. The police only thought that this strange creature had a strong, aggressive nature. In order to protect herself, Xiaozi gritted her teeth and said that she didn't know anything. She also said that the mermaid didn't intend to let her go after seeing her. Lian Yang remembered this vicious woman who sent her to the director. Seeing that she was emotional and couldn't defend herself, the policeman even believed Xiaozi's words. Lian Yang was finally sent to the state's secret agency. The director also announced to the public that he died in an accident. Lian Yang was treated as a strange creature to be studied. After suffering so much, her forgotten strength broke out. She tried to escape from the laboratory, but was treated as a dangerous object by the secret force. After her death, even her body wasn't treated well. Instead, it was cruelly dissected for research. What about Xiaozi? She had nothing to do with any of this. Relying on her previous popularity, she took on a few big productions and shot to fame, becoming an A-list actress. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes and almost couldn't help swearing. At this time, Lian Yang was still in the clamshell that couldn't be opened. Bai Gang was looking for a chance to sell her. Originally, Lian Yang woke up at this time. But this time, Gu Xingyin didn't plan to come out. Just sell her. No matter what, it couldn't be worse than the current situation. Gu Xingyin looked at the man outside through the dark clamshell. He tried to open the shell with a kitchen knife and pliers in vain. However, how could something that could withstand thousands of years without being destroyed be damaged by his puny strength? Gu Xingyin yawned impatiently and began to think about what to do. With her current appearance, it was impossible to escape alone. Not to mention, even if this body had changed its soul, it had never transformed into a pair of legs. This meant that she could not leave the water or walk on the ground. What's more, she didn't know how to speak human language. Any human who saw him in this state would probably call the police, right? Gu Xingyin was discouraged. She could only stay here and pretend to be a fossil for a while before thinking of other ways. In fact, there was still the best possibility to meet him. Even if he did not have any memories of her, Gu Xingyin was confident that he would not be afraid of her, nor would he harbor any malicious thoughts towards her. The possibility of this happening wasn't small. The fate between the two of them and the luck of the main characters gave her a glimmer of hope. In the room, Bai Gang looked at the huge clamshell that didn't move at all and couldn't help but feel discouraged. When he saw it at the seaside, he was ecstatic, thinking that he had found a treasure. According to those legends, such a big clamshell might contain some kind of huge pearl. He wanted to find a professional to cut it, but he was afraid that there would be nothing inside after opening it. After thinking for a while, he decided to send this thing to an auction not long after. It would be best if someone could buy it. If no one wanted it, he would spend money to find someone to cut it open. Anyway, he just picked it up. He didn't feel distressed at all. Chapter 851. It was an accident that Fengqing came here. He had planned to go to another city to talk about a cooperation, but the boss of that company suddenly called to apologize and said that there was an accident at home. Fengqing asked around and found out that the boss's son was in a car accident and was now in the hospital. After knowing that it was not an excuse, he didn't care about what happened next. Then his plan fell through for a day. At this time, his childhood friend Li Zi said that there was an auction today and he could come to see if there was anything good. Li Zi's real name was Li Zi. He was the third child in the family and had 2 older brothers. It was said that when his mother was pregnant with him, she found someone to check and said that it was a girl. Li Zi's mother, who wanted a daughter, was very happy and had already thought of a name. But she didn't expect that it would be a boy with a handle. Li Zi's mother was depressed and accepted the fact, but she didn't change her son's name. Every time Li Zi talked about it, he was depressed. His friends also gave him face and always called him Li Zi. In 2 months, it would be Fengqing's mother's birthday. He thought about it and agreed to come. In the end, he really saw something that he was interested in. At first glance, there was nothing magical about the huge clam shell that needed 2 staff members to carry. Fengqing listened with interest as the host on the stage promoted this big thing with great emotion. Unfortunately, no matter how many flowers he mentioned, not many people expressed their interest in buying them. Well, who would buy such a thing that didn't have any value other than its appearance? How old was it? It wasn't an antique. No one present was stupid. Bai Gang was so nervous that he kept drinking water. He prayed that someone would take a fancy to it. Otherwise, he would have come here for nothing. He even had to pay for an admission ticket. The threshold here was not low. A ticket cost almost 3 months of Bai Gang's salary. Under his prayer, someone really made a bid. 1 million, Fengqing said lightly. Many people looked in the direction of the voice, wanting to see who this idiot with a hole in his head was. Spending 1 million to buy such a thing and put it in the house to suppress evil? However, when they saw who this idiot was, they tactfully withdrew their gazes. So it was this person from the Feng family. Even if he burned 1 million yuan for fun, no one would dare to say anything about it. Who asked him to be rich? Origin City's Feng clan was not only wealthy, but their power in secret was something that no one dared to underestimate. Fengqing clasped his hands and said to Li Zi with a smile, "It looks pretty good. Take it home and put it in my newly built swimming pool." Li Zi, everyone who heard this, "Fine, you have money, you can do whatever you want." The happiest person was, of course, Bai Gang. This was 1 million yuan. He had picked up 1 million yuan out of thin air. Fengqing didn't have any intention of meeting the seller. He directly asked someone to send her back to his villa and followed behind her in his car. After those people placed the huge and heavy clam shell in the corner of the pool according to his instructions and left, he was the only one left in the villa. Fengqing stood at the edge of the pool and looked at the clamshell. He had always believed in his intuition, and he had invested in several successful businesses because of his intuition. This time, when he saw the item on the stage, his heart skipped a beat. An unprecedented possessiveness surged in his heart. He didn't understand where this feeling came from, but he followed his heart and bought it. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.